All right. Welcome to COMP229. It's not the summer 2016, it's fall 2016 semester. And it is week one, part one of our broadcast. I'm going to do several parts throughout this time. I usually do about an hour at a time. If you guys want to find me and my website or my YouTube channel, you can always go to youtube.com and you can go to / if I can type this in properly, YouTube. / my first initial, my last name, which is T. Tsiriopoulos, or you can put my Tom Tsiriopoulos in there. That's the link, right? If you go there, you're going to see immediately if that there will be a new broadcast that I'm doing right now, and we're broadcasting live. So we're right now we're live on YouTube. I'm using the earphones not because I don't want to listen to you or I'm listening to music. I'm using the earphones to give me a better sound quality on YouTube. That's what we're doing right now. So we're recording everything I do, all the clicks that I do and everything else are being recorded live. Again, I'm not recording you. I'm recording my screen, and this is just as another tool for you to or to help you when it comes to from a reference perspective. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be working with Windows primarily, and if you notice, I can't use Visual Studio with Mac, right? So it's going to be Windows, and I'm virtualizing Windows. I'm using a terabyte SSD that's external. That's what I'm doing right now, and I'm using it to launch a virtualized version of Windows 10. That's what you're seeing right now. Okay, so this is a virtualized version of Windows 10. However, I'm using it with Boot Camp, which is really cool. So almost like using the Metal, right? Not quite. I had a bit of problem setting up because it looks like the new fandangled projector system does not comply with my little Windows system that I built. And so we've had a few glitches today, but I may resort back to doing things, if you notice how it's flashing, we may resort back to doing things with, instead of using HDMI, what I'm using right now, I might go to VGA for the second recording. We'll see how it goes. Just from a compatibility perspective with the projector panel over here. All right, so we're going to be working on Visual Studio. We're working on Windows, and if you're with a machine in front of you, part of what we're doing today is we're talking about concepts, ASP.NET, but it's also a hands-on. So what I do with you guys is more of a demo, project-style learning, as opposed to you watch where I talk about concepts and then you take it back home and do it on your own. We kind of intercut between lab and lecture as we go. So please, in the machine in front of you, please log into Visual Studio 2015. All right, so that's what I'm going to be doing. And I want to do that so that way when we launch Visual Studio 2015, I'm using the enterprise version. I'm going to tell you where to get it if you want to use download and use it for on your laptop. I'll tell you where to get everything. And it's free for students at Centennial. So if you don't know, you can go to DreamSpark if you haven't used it already and download your version of Visual Studio 2015. So while this is launching, I'll come back over here and talk about the tools you're going to need for some of the stuff we've talked about today. So one of the things I asked you to do for your lab already is GitHub, right? Because we're going to be using GitHub for something called revision control or source control, right? Now, this knows who I am, but I'm going to go into incognito mode to access GitHub to see what you will see if you first sign up. So it's going to look like this, right? So sign up for GitHub. Has someone never used GitHub before? Is there someone in the class you've never used GitHub before? This is good. This is going to be a good experience for you. We use GitHub throughout the industry when we develop anything, whether it's websites, applications, mobile applications, whatever we do, we're always using GitHub for revision control. It's not just for backing up our stuff. It's not like we put it up on GitHub like we do on Dropbox or on Google Drive. It's not like that. We can use it that way, certainly. But that's not the main reason why we use GitHub. We use GitHub for keeping track of our versions, for project management, for many other reasons. But GitHub is the place we share code with each other, and all the code that I'm going to be talking about in this course is going to be shared up online with you on GitHub. So how do you find me on GitHub? You can find me on GitHub with github.com/Centennial College. All right, that's the channel that we're going to be using. All the code that I've done over several semesters now is there. So if you want to see any of the code we've done and any of the code we're going to be doing, all my code examples are going to be shared with you on GitHub. When you do an exam, right, which we will have a couple of exams in this course, the code I'm going to share with you is going to be on GitHub. So if you, when I say it's going to be open book, and all my exams, because they're going to be practical, are open book, right? All the examples are going to be on GitHub. So if you don't have access to GitHub now, it's a bad thing. And that's why I make it a requirement today as one of our labs, the first lab, for 2%, I'm paying you to sign up for GitHub. So please sign up for GitHub if you don't have it already. Okay, so GitHub is one of the tools we're using. The other one is Microsoft Azure. We talked about this. So if I go to Microsoft Azure, if I just type in Microsoft Azure, if I can type today, if I type Microsoft Azure, you can see if we go here, azure.microsoft.com, this is the main site for Azure. It talks about what Azure can do for you. Think about it as a service offering from Microsoft that provides something like platform as a service, right? Web services. So we're going to be building websites, and they're going to be live. So anyone, anywhere in the world can look at your website after you build it, right? And the reason for this is because I want you to take away the ability for you to make your websites on the cloud. Is this the only platform that we can use with ASP.NET? Absolutely not. But it's the one that's the most commonly used, Microsoft Azure, as well as private servers that we use to serve up ASP.NET pages. I love this. I love the technology. I love the technology. All right. Sorry, for people who are watching, it's because my projector's nicely flashing, and it has nothing to do with me. But anyways, so Microsoft Azure is the second tool. How do you sign up? You see where it says free account? Don't go there, right? Where you want to go is you want to go to DreamSpark, dreamspark.com. I know you're going to go to free account, and it's not really a free account. It's a trial, right? You're going to go to DreamSpark, and there is a, if I go to Microsoft DreamSpark, so let's go to DreamSpark, and go this .com, right? If I go to dreamspark.com, good. And now they've changed everything on us. It's fantastic, right? What we want to do is for students, for academic institutions, they have something, but there's also stuff for students where you can sign up for Azure here. This is the place that you're going to sign up for Azure. Unfortunately for us today, and by agree, sure, I agree. Was that? DreamSpark Centennial might have it too, but I wanted to take you here first because this is the place where they have finished profile, the information for your account profile. So yeah, I'm not going to finish it here. But what we do is inside of our DreamSpark account, you go and sign up as a student, and what you can do is you can sign up for a DreamSpark access to Microsoft Azure. We're going to be talking about this. I'm going to be providing you the link at the break. Our links were working before, and of course now they're not working at all. Some of the resources that we have here is not just about DreamSpark, because this is a different site. This is imagine.microsoft.com. It used to be Microsoft DreamSpark, but I think what they've done is they've realigned everything. If you go to E5 on the hub, though, if you don't know where that is, if you go to e5onthehub.com, it changes too, right? But if you go to discounts by school, and if I go to college and university, if you don't know where to find your the school, and if we search for our country, Canada, and our province, Ontario, right? If you go to the school, and if you put in Centennial College, right? Now there's different ones. If you look at Centennial College, this is the one we want here, right? Under department, you want to choose Centennial College. Let me see if I can bring this up a little higher for you. All right. And it's going to be the ICET one, this one, okay? So there's actually a couple things have changed. One is Microsoft Imagine Premium, which is engineering, all right? But this one is the one we want, okay? If you look, they have things like, VMware Workstation, Adobe Creative Cloud, at a discount and so on. If I click on View All Software, it takes you to the site one day when it comes up, unless they've taken it away. Okay, we'll just go to my link. I love when things change. I love when things change. All right, it's a mantra. Let's see if they've changed. Oh, here it is. So it's e5onthehub.com, and this is the. I'm going to send you the link. I'm going to put it up on Slack for those people who are following me on Slack. On that, if this is where I'm going to share some of the information here. So here's Slack, and there's several channels that I'm hosting right now. One of them is COMP229. And Slack is a communication tool that we're going to be looking at, and we're going to be using this semester. Right? I used it all last semester with a couple of my courses, worked great. And it's something that companies are using nowadays for communications and project management. So it's a great opportunity for you guys to learn Slack. It's a very neat tool. So an example, if I wanted to copy this link with you and share it with you on Slack, I would just populate it just by dragging and dropping or copying and pasting right in here. And you would get the link for Slack. So if anyone's on the general channel, you'll see that you can kind of download or get the link from Slack. If I looked at the total members, if you join my team director, there's quite a few of you that have already joined up. There's 22 members. I would love if all of you joined up. So how is this a good tool? Well, let's say, for example, I want to communicate with one of my friends, right, directly. I can message her, right, because I can say, hey, welcome. You know, it's kind of a messaging tool we can use, right? The good thing is, and you'll get the message in a second, the good thing is that I don't need to know your phone number. You don't need to know my phone number. But we can share a lot of stuff on Slack, not just links and so on, but also things like files and all kinds of other stuff that we can share together. I'm going to make some announcements on Slack. And sometimes if you want to ask me a quick question, I'll respond quicker on Slack than I will through email. It's just something that I've been doing lately. Right? So please use Slack as my primary mode of communicating with me, especially things like if you want to connect with me and you want to have office time with me, please use Slack as a way of communicating with me. You can communicate with me directly. And here's one great start. I like that. Here's another reason why I'm using Slack. I'm going to be broadcasting, and you might be at home one day. You might say, Tom, you know what? I can't make it in today. I had a hard day, and you know, I can't make it in. I went to work. Some people might work. Or maybe you're studying for something else, but you still want to attend my class. Am I going to cry if you don't show up for 6:30 to 10:30 on a Wednesday night, every single Wednesday? It may not be required, and I'll tell you when it's really required. If I have a test, you need to be here. If I have a quiz, you need to be here. But if you have a lab, like this week, you could have probably attended remotely and handed it in on Friday, and I'm okay with that. I still recommend that you attend class. But let's say you're attending remotely and you have a question during my broadcast. Slack, right? Send me a Slack request or a Slack message. I'll see it up on my phone or on my machine in front of me, and I'll try and answer your question at the break. All right, so we can have more of a conversation, even though if you're remote. Okay, so we're going to use some of these tools. So this is the tool or the link for E5 on thehub.com for Centennial. On that, so if you wanted to download something like Visual Studio 2015 to get going on your laptop, you can certainly download it from here. Every student and faculty at Centennial College and many other colleges across Ontario have access to free Microsoft tools by just going to e5onthehub.com or DreamSpark and downloading Visual Studio 2015 or whatever other tool you want. For example, if you wanted to download Windows 10 to set up your own environment, you could certainly do that by going to operating systems, and you can look at several operating systems in here, like for example, Windows 10, right? But what about Azure? What if I don't find something that I want? Like for example, if I type in Azure, is there a way of signing up? If I kind of do a search, sometimes it'll come up with, this is the compute emulator. We don't want that. If you scroll through, there's other things like SDK, the storage emulator, all this stuff, authoring tools. This is not what we want. We don't want any of these things. We want the ability for us to have a free account on Azure, right? It's called a DreamSpark account that we can kind of set up. And I'm going to give you the link for that, the free link later on today, all right? Because it should have been in our DreamSpark, in our DreamSpark.com link, and they've changed the links, of course. Okay. So some of the tools we're going to be using. We're going to be talking about more of these tools in a second. I don't know why, but I'm not getting any power. Just a second. It'd be very bad if I stopped. Of course. There we go. All right. Still up. Yay. All right, so again, so what we're doing is we're using these tools, and these are the tools we're going to be using to build stuff with Microsoft. If I switch over to Visual Studio for a second, we're going to be using Visual Studio with C#. There's opportunities to do ASP.NET with VB. Please, whatever you do when we build our projects going forward for this semester, please don't use VB. That's not what we're doing here. All right, it's C#. So how do I do that for people who forgot how to set up a new project? By the way, there's different ways of doing things. One of the things you're going to see in your book, which is a little old, is File, and then New, and then Website. We're not going to do it this way. We're not going to go File, New, Website. Please don't do it that way, even if the book says so, right? We're going to be doing File, New Project. So I can go File, New Project, or New Project down here from the Start screen. So click on New Project to start us off. Typically what I like to do is I want to name my projects, like we always do, after the lesson. So I'm going to say something like, it's going to be something like this. It's going to be, say, COMP229, fall 2016. I'll be okay. I'm still in my summer, right? And then it's lesson 1, right? That's going to be the project that I'm going to be naming, right? I'm going to be hitting on under C#. I'm going to click on Web, and when I click Web, we have several different templates. You may not have all the lovely templates I have. I'll wait. Why, you have 2013 in front of you? That'd be bad, but yes, 2013 is acceptable. I want to choose the highest level of framework I can. So if you have framework 4.6.1, that's what I recommend. You may not have that in the machine in front of you, right? If you do, that's what I recommend. Please don't choose something like or framework 2 or something crazy, right? 4.5.2 is okay as well, but I'm going to be using 4.6.1 for my examples, okay? I'm clicking on ASP.NET Web Application, right? This is the one I want. And on the right, this is something that's not compatible with Microsoft Azure, right? I just want to let you know this, is Application Insights, all right? So Application Insights, please do not click this. Make sure this is unchecked when we do our stuff together, all right? Because this would be very bad if we used Application Insights, right? It wouldn't work properly. The other thing is that you're going to notice, and this is all in the PowerPoint, by the way, which I'm going to go over in a second. I want to create a directory for my solution, and I definitely want to add to source control. You may also see something like, if you've used it before, use GitHub as your source provider, right? That might be the other option. Let's add our solution to source control as we do this. So step through with me, guys and girls. By now, even Visual Studio 2013 is very similar to 2015. You won't see many differences here. This is a little different than if you've done COMP229, right? And some of you did that with me last semester. We built applications with C#, but we did it by using something like if you notice, we did a console application in the beginning, and then we did a Windows Forms application. It's similar. We're using a different template. We're just using a web template, and we're choosing ASP.NET Web Application.NET Framework. There are other newer ones you could see. For example, if you downloaded Visual Studio 2015 with Windows 10, you might see some other ones, like .NET Core. Please don't choose those. They are different, and they will not provide you with the same options as I'm going to show you now. OK, let's click OK, finally. It's going to bring you up several other options here. One of them is, which template do you want to use? And notice that it says ASP.NET 4.6.1 templates. You might have, if your system in front of you doesn't have 4.6.1, you might have 4.5.2. That's OK. They'll be very similar to what you see here. I want to choose web forms. Oh yeah, this is fantastic technical difficulties today, right? We're going to switch this. We're going to make it so that I use the a VGA after this. OK, that's number one. So web forms is one thing I want to use. Notice that on the bottom here, it says add folders and core references for web forms. All right? We definitely want to have that clicked. We don't want to click MVC or Web API or unit tests. We don't want to click those. And I definitely don't want to host it in the cloud using Azure this way. So please uncheck this one. OK? So it's web forms, and that's it. Notice that there's an authentication option. One of the things that web forms has that's built in for us is authentication, where actually Azure allows you to have a log in and log out window. For today's application, what I want you to do is go into authentication and choose no authentication, right? And then click OK. In the future, what we're going to do is we're going to scaffold out a bare bones empty application. We're going to start with the empty application template, and we're going to build out everything from scratch. For today, though, I want to talk about the template, and that's why we're starting with this one. All right? Let's press OK at this point. What this is going to do is Visual Studio is you're going to use this template to scaffold out the project structure for you, right? And that's one of the beautiful things about ASP.NET, the whole framework. It scaffolds out the structure for you. And actually, we do it with other modern frameworks like Node.js. If you're someone who likes, using Node.js in the back end, right? We use scaffolds to create applications quicker, right? Please don't think that this is a drag and drop environment, because all drag and drop that you might see in the book, we're not going to be doing. All right? I'm not going to be using the Visual Developer. I don't know why I did that just now. I'm not going to be using Visual Developer to create our applications. What we're going to be using is we're going to be writing code to develop our web applications. I just love having problems. I love having problems, right? Actually, some of the best learnings we get is from problems like this, right? As developers, we're always going to be faced with something that may not work. It works great at home, doesn't work great here. That's okay, right? So what happened to my project? I made it and it's gone, right? What am I going to do? Am I going to cry? No, right? One of the things you can do is you can also, if it craps out like it just did for me, you can always go to Open and you can say project or solution, right? And it's going to take you to the place where we're creating your projects. And mine is under project, Visual Studio 2015 projects. And I'm just going to click on this project and click Open, and hopefully it finished creating the project, hopefully, and we're going to be fine. And if it didn't create the project, I'll recreate it. It's not a big deal, right? Let's see what happens if it actually does this thing for me. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. All right, let's talk about the piece parts of Visual Studio for a second before we go on. One of the things you're going to notice is this. In the middle of your screen is the place where we're going to have our editor. This is where we're going to do all the editing right here, right? Right now, you don't see an editor on board because I haven't clicked anything on this side. This is your project structure, right? So what you're going to see here is things like app data, a folder that's been generated by ASP.NET, the template, all right? As well as app start, a content folder, a fonts folder, a scripts folder, and a bunch of other stuff. And when you first look at this thing, you're like, holy crap, there's just so much stuff on here. Well, what do I have to concentrate on? How can I learn this framework? Don't worry. We're not going to learn the framework like this. This is just, I'm just showing you, if you wanted to start really quickly, you can start with a scaffold like this. And this is what they talk about in the book. However, in the book that's used for the course, and if I was going to go and look at the outline for the course, let's take a look at the outline really quickly. So here's our course outline, right? And if you look at the book that is recommended by our course outline, right, it is this, right? This 2011 Build Your Own ASP.NET 4 website, 4th edition. I'm not going to tell you this is a bad book. This is actually a pretty good book. It's a little old and dated, and what I'm going to be doing with you over the course of the semester is filling in the blanks, stuff that's changed since 2011. We're sitting at 2016 right now, almost on the cusp of 2017, right? So there's lots of changes that have gone on since then, right? For example, Bootstrap has been added into the framework, right? Where before it was something of an option that you had to download with NuGet, right? And there's a lot of other things that have been added in as well. So some of the stuff that we're going to be using the book as a guide to build our applications. But for the most part, what I'd like you to do is, as we build stuff, I'm going to be giving you new ways of doing things based on the latest framework. I'm also going to be recommending other resources for you other than the book for the course that you can access for free. Okay, so it's nothing that you're going to have to suffer to get. I'm not going to ask you to buy anything beyond what it says up here. Again, it's not a bad book. It's a little dated, but it does cover all the topics for the course. Now here's something that it does says. Whenever time it says student web, right, that's not going to happen for me. We're not going to do student web stuff together. We're going to do Azure. And we're going to make that happen for us, whether even if I have to pull my hair out today. I'll make sure that you guys all have access to Azure, right? It's not going to be student web. All right. So assignment 1, 2, 3, 4, you're still going to have assignments similar to this. One thing that I will tell you is I'm probably going to reduce the value of these tests because they're worth like 25% each. And I know it scares the crap out of students when we do big exams that are worth 25% each. I'm going to cut those back a little bit, right? And what I'm going to do to make up the difference is you're probably going to have a larger assignment. So probably your final project or your team project is going to be worth more than 15%, right? So it's going to be probably bumped up to probably around 30%, 25 to 30%. I can't do it all together, and it's going to be broken up into several milestones or parts. So you might have part 1, part 2, part 3 that allows you to build out a larger application, right? And that's going to be probably in the second half of the semester after semester break, where you're going to get your team project, right? You're going to have several other assignments as well. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to provide you more like a course plan that I'm going to be sharing with you over the next week or so. So you're going to see a slight change to what we're seeing up here in terms of our time frames and some of the stuff that you're seeing in here, all right? More or less, you're going to get several assignments that are going to demonstrate the use of ASP.NET, and I'll be sharing the details, the time frames, and everything up on eCentennial. None of my tests, for people who don't know me, are written. There's no written tests in this course. There's no paper in this course. Everything is online, all right? So when we do a test, practical test, whatever, it's all online. And that way it helps us. You'll know when your stuff is all due, and everything, all your marks will come up online as well. Hopefully we'll be on time this week and this semester, as opposed to last semester. I have to mention that because last semester was crazy. All right, things to note are the topics for each week. Those aren't going to change too much because those are topical examples of what we need to learn. For example, our course introduction, the stuff we've talked about today, we're going to cover that today. We're going to be talking about how we create ASP.NET web applications. How are we going to do that? And I'm doing that already with you, right? So today is more of an intro day, and I'm not sure that we're going to go all the way to 10:30 today. Right? We're going to try and take several breaks, like I said, throughout the day to make sure we accomplish everything. Next week, we're going to get more into ASP.NET basics, right? For example, some object-oriented concepts, as well as things like server controls on week 3, how to use those things. And then by the second half of the semester, if you notice, because we're in a 717 scenario this semester. It's kind of our first time we've adopted this thing. I don't know if you've been told this by other professors, but you'll have 7 weeks on, a 1 week break, and then 7 weeks again. Right? That's how it's going to be doing it. And for the rest of the time here at Centennial, that's what the pattern is going to be through fall, winter, and summer. All right? So it's not going to be a weird pattern like we've had in the past to align to holidays. It's going to be 717 every single time. Right? So after the 7th week is where we're going to do our little test. I'm gonna hold it there again. My feeling is it's going to be worth about 10 to 15%. Right? I'm going to try and make it something like that, 15%. And then in the second half, we're going to connect to databases. Right? The databases we're going to be connecting to are going to be SQL databases. There will not be Access databases or MySQL databases. They'll be Microsoft SQL databases. So in order for us to use the full SQL or Microsoft product. In the second half, we're also going to be handling things like MVC framework. So the MVC says we're supposed to kind of touch on MVC week 12 and 13. I'm probably going to bring it up a little earlier into probably week 9 because even though web forms are 80% of stuff that we do out there, MVC is the future, right? So if we don't talk about MVC, you go to a little interview and they say, do you know MVC? And you're like, no. That's bad, right? So we're not going to allow that to happen. We're going to teach you MVC in this course, right? And it's going to be a little earlier. In order for you to be successful with MVC, you really need to know C#, all right? So if you're not that great at C#, you need to sharpen up your skills, and I'm going to help you do that as we go forward. The other thing we're going to be using a lot with our database is the entity framework. We're going to be talking about entity framework and link, right? So we're going to be talking about what that is later on in the course as well, right? We've talked about link. You should have already been introduced to link in COMP229. Did you guys have link in COMP229? Some of you people were with me. You did, right? Yes, you did. Yeah. If you didn't, it's okay. We're going to kind of reintroduce link, and it's a methodology, a tool for us to connect to data sources, both database data sources as well as memory data sources, and even file data sources. You can use link to connect and search for data, select data from different data sources. So we're going to talk about that. And it's not going to be in week 11. I guarantee you it's going to be a little earlier, all right? So there's going to be a few changes, and I'm going to share those changes with you as we go forward. There's not going to be any surprises. When I tell you this is going to be something due, I'm going to be talking about it and recording it through the time we're doing the course together. So there's not going to be a surprise. If you're surprised, I'm going to be surprised if you're surprised. Put it that way, right? Remember that we're going to be sharing things in both ways, both on eCentennial and with Slack. So there's a couple of tools we're going to be using to make sure that everyone is on board with all the communications we need to make. Okay. So that's really the course outline in a nutshell. Again, we're covering mostly ASP.NET Web Forms, and then at the end, again, I'm targeting around probably week 10 or so, or week 9, MVCs. We're going to introduce MVC around that time. Let's see how things go. Any questions around what we're going to be covering? Okay, so again, first part, ASP.NET Web Forms. Second part, MVC we're going to handle. Some people have asked for things like, can I learn Angular with Web API? Yeah, I know how to do that, but we don't have any time, right? It's not because I don't want to show you guys how to do that really cool stuff. It's just that we don't have time. This course is packed full of information. And although it sounds like we have tons of time because we have 4 hours at a time, there's really no time, truly, for that kind of stuff. There's a lot of information to share with you, and we're kind of rushed for everything we need to share. Okay, so that's really what we're covering. And that's why I wanted to kind of record this stuff for you as well. Let's go over to our little project here to run it for the first time, right? So when we run our project for the first time, notice that my default browser is Chrome, right? Some of you may have poor Internet Explorer or Edge, right? Let's stick with Chrome or Firefox, I recommend, if you have access to that. You can always download that for your local machine. Why Chrome? It's the most compatible when it comes to HTML5 technologies across everything, and it's going to make our life a little easier. You might say, well, what about Edge? Edge is part of Microsoft. You're saying, Tom, that we're using Microsoft products. I agree. We're using Microsoft products, but for the most part, Chrome is one of the most popular web browsers out there. I want to make sure we target that as we're building things. All right, let's run this thing. So there's 2 ways to run this. Of course, you can definitely click here and run that. We can also click on debug and then start without debugging. Let's do that first. Start without debugging. And you can also do Control F5 if you want to do it that way as well as a shortcut. What this is going to do is it's going to bring up our website for the first time. Notice that it's running on the right side over here, down here on the bottom. Notice on the bottom, right? Let me try this again. That I'm running IIS, right? Here's IIS down here on the bottom of the screen right here. IIS is Internet Information Services Express, which is Microsoft's server, a little micro server that's running locally that we can test our web applications, right? So Internet Information Services down here. And it's generated this web app, right? That's what it is. I have several pages. For example, I have my home page, I have my about page, and I have my contact page, right? With some stubs of information that we have in here, right? Okay. This is nothing new for you, but I wanted to show you that this is what it generates. So there's several pages that are part of this whole project. Okay. If you have any errors like this, again, and it says elements must have sufficient color contrast, notice that I have some additional plugins that you may not have, right? You can turn these things off or on if you like. If you want to add in additional plugins, Visual Studio has a ton of plugins to help you from a development perspective. So if I go click on Tools, and I click on something like Extensions and Updates, I have several extensions and updates that are not part of the standard Visual Studio 2015 or 2013 install, right? And I can recommend several of them to you. One of them that I'm going to be using a lot is the Bootstrap Snippet Pack. So please download and install this extension. And again, you get there by Tools, Extensions and Updates, and you can go to Online to search for them. So if I click Online, I can kind of search for the Bootstrap Snippet Pack. I can just type it in, Bootstrap, right? And if it'll kind of show up any of the extensions that I want. One of them is this Bootstrap Snippet Pack that I'm going to be using, right? And there's others, right? For example, if I click Online again and I kill this filter, you can see that I got several of them. One of them, another really useful one is Visual Studio Web Essentials, which is also a free download when we're building stuff out for Visual Studio. Web Essentials adds additional code hinting for JavaScript, as well as things for TypeScript and other languages that I highly recommend you download if you're going to be using the Visual Studio 2015 or 2013 environment, right? So VS Web Essentials, and you can actually get it from a website. If I go to vswebessentials.com, if I'm not wrong, here it is, you can actually download this free extension for Visual Studio, which is an awesome extension and that I use all the time. One of the really cool tools that it includes is something called Zen coding, right? Zen coding. And if I click on the HTML link right here, right, what it allows you to do is do shortcuts to create your HTML, right? So Zen coding, if you actually go in there, we're going to be talking about this a little bit. It allows you to use shortcuts to create HTML. If I click on there, there's actually a Zen coding website. And one of the things it does is it allows us to write shorthand and then really scaffold out our web pages really quickly. Here's an example of that. So if you have Visual Studio Web Essentials installed, and I'm going to modify my default page. So when we build our ASP.NET pages, one of the things that's different that you're going to notice when it comes to building other web pages, normally we have an index.html page, yeah? Not so with ASP.NET. Typically, we use something called our default.aspx page, this one, right? And even if there's a little bit of elements and insufficient color contrast, I can avoid them, all right? Don't worry about that. Don't worry, we're going to stop and I'm going to use VGA, and we're not going to have this blinking problem in a second, right? All right, so there's several pages. All of our pages in Visual Studio, when we use ASP.NET Web Forms, has this ASPX extension on it instead of like an HTML extension. Why? Because the difference between ASPX and HTML is that things are being handled on the back end by the server. So we do a lot of server-side code that's being handled on the back end, right? There's two parts to the web page that you see with web forms. The front side, right, which uses different tags, just like we've seen before, and the back end, which is actually using C#, right? And that's the difference. This is a system where we're using C# to code the server side. It's very similar to other solution stacks that we've seen before. For example, AMP, the AMP stack. Who knows what the AMP stack is? Oh, all right. AMP. If I go to the AMP stack, and it's not accelerated mobile pages, the AMP solution stack is Apache, MySQL, and PHP, if you wanted to know what that is. And there's different stacks. There's AMP, LAMP for Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, MAMP for Mac, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and WAMP if you want to do with Windows, Apache, MySQL, PHP. So this is the stack, a solution stack. Apache is your server, MySQL is your database, PHP is your backend script language, right? So ASP.NET then relates in the same way to a stack, a solution stack. IIS is your server, Microsoft SQL is your database, and ASP.NET, whether it's web forms or MVC, is your front end, is your scripting language that we're going to be using C# to script that language, right? So it's a solution stack, just like the mean stack. The mean stack is a more modern stack that we use a lot of times, and we use Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node, a very popular modern solution stack for creating web pages. So there's different stacks. Microsoft has theirs, all right? And we're using the Microsoft solution stack to create web pages. And these pages in the past and even now are called dynamic web pages because we're using server-side controls to serve up dynamic content. We're going to be talking about that. All right, so different solution stacks. Let me go back down to here. So if I click on this default ASPX page, there's going to be some things you're going to notice. Let's do this together. So if I double-click on this, it's going to bring up my editor on the left, right? And it's going to be very busy. I'm just going to unclick this so you can see the entire thing here. Notice that there is a couple of things we need to talk about. I'm just going to go to the top. Right, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see everything. It's quite busy. I'm just going to kind of cut this line in half, not because I want to cut it in half, or I suggest you do, but just so you can see it all, right? So this is the first line. The first line is something we call a directive, right? We use this less than percentage and percentage greater than to house a directive. And there's several directive attributes. For example, the page title, right? The page title is called the home page. That's what's going to appear on the title of your page. The language, again, C# or VB, you can specify here. That's the back-end coding language we're going to use for the server side, right? As well as the master page file, which is almost like a default template that we're going to use for all pages, right? Auto event wire up means that when we create some kind of server control, we wire up everything on the back end automatically when we double click it, right? And we're going to talk about that. And then the code behind file that's related. Think about the code behind file as the C# file that's related to the page, the web page. So there's two parts to every web page. The front page, which is your default.aspx page, and then the back end page, the code behind file, which is your default.aspx.cs page. The CS stands for C#. All right? So just like any other C# program. So two parts of every page, front end and back end. And then what it inherits from? It inherits from this particular page, right? Which is the C# namespace, right? So again, it's the name of our project, COMP229, fall 2016, lesson 1. And then the partial class that we create on the code behind file. And we'll talk about this. Even if you don't understand everything right now, don't worry. I'm just talking about the directive. And the directive is always on line 1. I've split it into 2 lines so you can see it, but typically it's housed or bordered by or contained in this syntax here, less than %, greater than. And think about this as when we use this syntax, we're saying, hey, C#. These are the attributes. I have to wait till it blinked on again. These are the attributes, all right? Here's something else you've probably never seen. If you're a web developer, you probably haven't seen ASP content. This is a custom tag, and it's built into ASP.NET. So ASP.NET has its own tags, not just HTML tags like div tags and section tags and all the other semantic HTML. We're going to see all of that stuff, but we're also going to have these tags here. So here's a tag that we're going to see for the first time, ASP, which says, hey, this is an ASP.NET custom tag. It's called the content tag, right? And it has an ID, body content. We can refer to this tag with the ID. In fact, any control we define on the front side of the page with an ID, we can refer to on the code behind file. So if I create an ID of body content, I can refer to it on the code behind file. Please do not mistake this for the ID tag of an HTML page. It's not the same. ID that we use in an HTML page, it signifies a way for us to hook into that particular element. Here, we're not doing that. This isn't an element necessarily. This is a section that we're going to use to specify to the server that we're going to be doing server-side programming within this section. Okay, anything that's inside the ASP content tags from the beginning until the end, which is down here, right? This is my ASP content tag, is going to be taken and displayed on the page. Just to show you what I'm talking about, let's delete everything that's between these two tags. So here's my ASP content tag. Let's get rid of all these div tags all the way down until we get down to this last div tag and just delete it. Now you're going to be left with this. So please do that. By the way, if you follow along, you can probably do your lab, right? So let's do Friday instead of waiting for later on. Okay, so here's my ASP, my tag. And notice that there's nothing in here anymore. And if I run this thing for the very first time, right, you're going to notice that I'm going to get a very blank looking page, right? Because I've killed all the content. Right? Let's take a look at that. So again, what's happening is when I run with debugging, I'm running my IIS server. That's part of my solution stack. And then I'm getting my nav bar, and I'm also getting, my footer, but there's nothing in between. And where is this stuff coming from? Remember what I said. The directive, which is line 1, I'm just going to stop debugging for a second. The directive, which is line 1 of every ASPX page, right? The directive, which is between these two yellow tags right here, right? This tells us what the master page file is, which is located at site.master, right? Notice we're also using a tilde sign. This tilde sign says use absolute positioning to find my site master on the root of my page. That's what it means. What does this mean? If I look at my solution, I have a site master page right here. Here's my site master page. And what's happening is my site master page is going to be called up first. Notice this is something more that you've seen before. I've got my doc type. Right, as an example, I have my HTML tags, my head tags, stuff that you've seen before, many pages that you've seen before. Not just this page, not just ASP.NET, but also some of other pages that we've made together. Maybe you've made on your own. Okay, here's something. I've got my head tag. Here's my head tag, and anything my head tag is it runs first. I also have something called there's another placeholder here, and these placeholder tags I can tap into. Right? For example, my placeholder, I have several scripts that I can use in my placeholder. Right now, it's running the modernizer script. We're going to be talking about bundles and how to use bundles to attach them to pages. But think about this almost like as a template for every single other page I make. So all my pages are going to go to this page first. It's going to create the nav bar for all my pages, plus the footer for all my pages, and then inside my site master page, there's going to be an area that's going to have main content with another content placeholder. So this content placeholder right here is where my content from each of my other pages, my default ASPX page, my contact.aspx page, and my other pages are going to go right here. So what happens is I take my partial page, which is my default.aspx page, plus my site master page. The server smashes that together and renders the completed page at the end. That's what happens, okay? So my master pages are very important because they create a common look and feel for all my websites, right? That's what it does. And in fact, this is a very modern way. Even now, we use partial pages, whether we're using ASP.NET, PHP, or Node.js on the back end. However we want to do it, we use partial pages with a common look and feel. All right, I'll wait till this is done, shimmering, and we'll go back. So again, default ASPX, all it has in here is the content that's going to appear on your default page or home page. So let's put in some content. Let's put in something like an H1 tag, and of course, what we're going to put in, hello world, right? Because we always do a hello world, right? And we're going to save it. And when we do that, it's going to appear. You look at the site master before the footer, right, and below all the other general content, which is our nav bar. Here's our nav bar. We're going to build this all out by hand in the future. I'm just showing you this as a scaffold so you understand just an intro into web forms, all right? Okay, so here's our footer, and then here's our content placeholder, and it's called main content. Notice that inside my content, I'm also referencing my content placeholder ID as main content, so I'm specifying that's where I want to put this content, this stuff, hello world, and it's going to appear that it's going to take my default page, that partial page, plus my site master, smash them together, and it's going to create another page with everything completed. Let's try this out. So let's just run this now. So if everything goes well, I should see hello world. And we're going to be talking about customization, how to customize these pages. There we go, hello world. And if you notice, it's got its own font. It's got everything that it needs because we're using Bootstrap, right? Bootstrap is it's giving us superpowers, right? It's making us look like pretty awesome because it's coloring everything. It's giving us margins. It's giving us spacing. It's giving us fonts. It's doing everything for us, and we're going to be using Bootstrap as we go forward. Yes. Which templates? For Bootstrap? The default template right now. We're going to be talking about that later on. All right, any questions so far? I want to take a short break. I know we've kind of covered a few things. I want to take a short break, do a little bit of a bio break. I want to regroup a little bit, right? Kind of fix my technology issues. And when we come back, I'm going to go more deeply into server controls and the ASP.NET framework, okay? So let's take a short break.